This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 487 for Christmas 2020. And welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. My name is Mike. You may see me around as Vegito EX, and we have right now a full house of Kanzenshuu family and friends for a fantastic review episode. So let's just get right on into it with introductions. Joining us across the pond, we have AJ. Hello.
Hello.
Been a while since you've been on the show. It's been like 2 years.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I think Therese said like Broly was the last thing. And yeah, that was a while ago now.
I've only done like 10 episodes since then, so it feels very recent.
Yeah, I think we all went into hibernation after that film.
You mentioned name there, Therese. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi.
You of most folks, you and another one here have been a little bit more regular on the show, but I welcome you, and then I will move on to that other person. Ken, hello, welcome to the show.
Hey, last time I was here, I was talking about Kakarot, and I'm still playing that game, so.
You were replaying that game.
Yes.
And speaking of, it's been 2 years. So happy to welcome back to the show. Truly a founding member of Kanzenshuu. Jake, you may know him best as Herms. Welcome back to the podcast, man.
Hello.
I love that's classic Jake. We just get a hello. We're ready to move on into things. Oh man, this is what a great bunch. Lady and gentlemen, I have gathered you all here together to do the Kanzenshuu thing. What we do for Dragon Ball Super is we review arcs as a whole. I don't know if that's the best way to do Dragon Ball Super, but it's what we've done. And we're going to pick that back up here with the manga. The first manga original arc for Dragon Ball Super, the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc. So I want to do a little bit of introduction for this arc. We all live in a world of Dragon Ball documentation for sure. So if it's new and if it's Dragon Ball, we're all in it. And this is the main story of Dragon Ball. So we've been living and breathing this really for 2 years now. This arc began in November 2018, partway through chapter 42 of the Dragon Ball Super manga, and it just concluded this past week. This is December 2020, as we're recording right now in the latest chapter. So if I did the math correctly, and I may be off on this, but we'll see. That's what editing is for. That's 24 full chapters, 2 half chapters, bookending, beginning and end, and a couple bonus chapters. There is one bonus in the Jump Victory Carnival 2019 official guidebook, and then there were 2 bonuses both in volumes 10 and 12 of the collected volumes, and the Jump Victory Carnival comic was in volume 11 for whatever that is worth. I guess I also want to say up front, this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. We are talking about everything. We're going to assume that you've read it, and for $2 a month on Viz's website, you can read literally all of Dragon Ball's main story, Dragon Ball Super included. If you haven't read it and don't care and still want to listen, and for those of you maybe who have read it, I haven't told folks I'm going to do this. This is the official Mike recap of the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc. Now, I want to say this isn't necessarily in chronological order, but I think it's close enough. Now, those of you who went through our manga review of Awesomeness many, many years ago, you remember we did some very, very detailed synopses, recaps of stuff. That is not what I'm doing here. These are the highlights. This is the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc. Some time has passed after the Tournament of Power and the Broly fight. The Galactic Patrol has come to effectively kidnap Buu because they need the Dai Kaioshin, who's absorbed within him, to take on a prisoner who broke out. This prisoner is Moro, originally captured 10 million years ago by Dai Kaioshin himself and imprisoned by the predecessor to the Galactic Patrol. Now, Moro, who is a magical old goat, has teamed up with another escapee, Cranberry, himself a former member of Frieza's army. They ultimately end up on Namek for the Dragon Balls, and Earth's fighters follow, including the Galactic Patrolman Merusu, who's in charge of over 100 sectors and is the best patrolman, absolutely, in the organization. Moro trounces everyone except for Buu, whose magic puts up a good fight there, but Merusu keeps getting in some good shots with some curious, impressive abilities. Oh, and Dai Kaioshin can just swap places with Buu now whenever he wants. So anyway, Moro wishes for his magic back, kills Cranberry, also wishes for the Galactic Patrol to be broken open, and he gets together a nice little gang, including Saganbo, the leader of this group, and notably also 7-3, an artificial life form who can steal abilities. Now, the bad guys end up coming to Earth, and we get the usual let's wait for Goku and Vegeta, who at this point are conveniently off training. I would say the biggest fight of importance along the way is definitely against 7-3, who keeps copying abilities, including Moro's, who he has in reserves. So where are Goku and Vegeta at this point? After thoroughly getting trashed by Moro earlier. Goku is training with Merusu, who clearly knows more than he's letting on, including about Ultra Instinct, and Vegeta has gone to Yardrat to begrudgingly learn wacky techniques. Everyone comes back to Earth to fight. All the bad guys come, and we get all the old friends enlisted into the Galactic Patrol, holding down the fort until Goku and Vegeta arrive. Goku's first to come back, takes out the small fry, including eventually Saganpo, and goes up against Moro again. Ultra Instinct Sign isn't cutting it, though. At some point, Vegeta arrives, having just taught himself teleportation after pretty darn well mastering some awesome key control on Yardrat, including this new Spirit Fission technique. Along the way, some crazy stuff happens, including, did we mention Merusu is an angel in training, and he breaks the rules by coming to fight for real. Moro does some crazy stuff, including eating 7-3, who had a backup of Moro in him. Moro merges with planet Earth. Goku figures out Ultra Instinct a little better, and here we are in the next arc of Dragon Ball Super.
I went much faster than my reread.
I was going to say, we all did some rereads over the last couple of days. Man, here is my first question for the group. I went into this being a fairly big fan of the Galactic Patrol in general. That for me started with Jaco when that came out, because we all knew as Jaco started that it was going to be a part of Dragon Ball. So that made me go back and really get into Sachiei and Gia and really learn all about this. So having Jaco along the way in Super was cool. Having a new arc with Galactic Patrol in the title made me really excited. AJ, let me start with you. What were kind of your expectations going into this arc? I mean, we're coming off the Tournament of Power. The TV series is over. Broly happens and isn't in the manga. What were you thinking as we were going into this new original arc?
I didn't really have any expectations. I feel like I checked out like very heavily on Super's narrative during the Tournament of Power. Because my thoughts on like the quality of that arc aside, I just wasn't in the mood for a tournament either way. And Broly was fine, but it was kind of, wrapped up and done with. And so coming into this, I don't think I had any expectations. I think I was just curious to see what happened. I didn't feel, one way or the other, really. I like the idea, like yourself, of involving the Galactic Patrol, because to be honest, anything involving Jaco is just the greatest thing ever. So, that's kind of it, really. I obviously had sort of hopes. I have very strong opinions on the direction I'd love to see the series go in and what Dragon Ball should be and that kind of thing. But I mean, other than that, I wasn't like looking at it going, I'm so excited for X and Y thing.
Trez, how about you? I mean, you were so deep into, and still have been, I think of Tournament of Power stuff, working on the wiki, all the angels, all the universes. That's kind of like the world you had been living in. And then consuming this story alongside that. What were you thinking going into this arc?
Well, I came at it like I come at everything else in Dragon Ball, from just a Fujoshi perspective.
Okay.
So as soon as I found out it was like an old goat, I was totally bored. So that was my perspective going in.
All right. Jake, how about you? I mean, the last big thing for the franchise was the Broly movie. You had a chance to go see it in Japan as it debuted, AJU as well. And you've been taking it easy for a while. So what was it like coming back to the main story of Dragon Ball?
Yeah, so after the Broly movie, I was more or less burnt out. So I had read the half of a chapter that started off the arc. And then after that, I more or less, I would see people mention what was happening on Twitter. And so I got some details that way. But apart from that initial half chapter, I didn't read anything at all until earlier this month, basically.
So you are coming into it the most recent.
So
That's great.
I binged through everything, up until the end of volume 14. So, once volume 14 came out, Then Therese was nice enough to essentially send me copies of the last 2 chapters.
Yeah, because you've been reading it in Japanese then, through the collected volumes.
Yeah, so essentially, I actually haven't read the final, half chapter in Japanese. I've read the first 10 pages raw, when they put those up on the official Dragon Ball site. The rest of it I just read in English on Viz.
That leaves Ken. What were your thoughts and impressions kind of going into this arc after everything that came before?
Very worried.
Okay.
I think it's hard to talk about the kind of fan I was at the time when this started, because I feel differently about Toyotaro now, but at the time when this arc started, Toyotaro had strong starts with his arcs, and then the way I saw it would fizzle out at the end, and that happened with Trunks, and that happened with the Tournament of Power. I need to reread those arcs. I might feel differently now, but I was really worried that I didn't know what we were going into with Moro, and the whole time of this arc, I was like, when is he going to drop the ball? When is he going to drop the ball?
Sure. And what is that ball drop? I think back to, again, I agree. I need to go back and read things, but the Trunks arc was just delayed and delayed. It just kept going and going. And my theory is that they wanted to keep that going, to keep that in people's memory as they were doing things like the Xenoverse DLC. Like, let's keep as many arcs in the public consciousness as possible. And then the Tournament of Power, its ending was, whoops, we tripped and we're done. There were so many, what a manga. Mm-hmm. So, what did you think that ball dropping would be? Or did you not even really know what it would be for this arc?
Well, I'm not sure exactly when we first saw what this arc was going to be. I don't know, like when they might have previewed Moro or not, but I just didn't know. I knew Toyotaro was a huge fan of the series and would have tons of little callbacks here and there, some big callbacks, a lot of big callbacks, but I just didn't know, how something that's his vision would play right from the start.
Yeah. I guess we can say debatably his vision. I definitely would encourage people to check out, I think at this point, it's still the last episode of the podcast. I talked with Ian Cipher about some of these interviews and what Toyotaro does, what Toriyama does. Things are still going through Toriyama. Toyotaro definitely has, let's say, more involvement. Like, he's doing character designs. That's what Ian and I talked about. He designed Moro. He designed Marisu. That's more than he had done for something like the Trunks arc. That was all Toriyama. Let's just go into Toyotaro right now. I feel like off the bat, there are some things that are Toyotaro through and through that are not things that Toriyama would do. The scene actually of Goku honing in on Moro's ki for the first time, and this is something that Toyotaro does a few times over the course of this arc, where we'll get like panel next to panel next to panel, and the panels get bigger, and it's like a closer view on someone. There was another one at some point where it's Marisu coming in, like swiping in from above. Those are the kinds of things that I feel like Toriyama didn't draw before. We would always get like the setup, and then the next page would be like a full page, like follow up on whatever that action was. AJ, let me ask you, we've talked extensively about Toyotaro in the past. What did you think of his composition style this arc?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I know what you're talking about as far as what's like very Toyotaro style and what's very Toriyama. Like, I think something Toyotaro does is he can quite often panel like a storyboard compared to a manga. Like, Toriyama will let the gutters of a page, convey movement, whereas I think Toyotaro quite likes to actually draw them, which can sometimes be really effective, sometimes can't be. I think in the past, I think maybe all of us have criticized some very cluttered stuff, cluttered paneling, especially during the Tournament of Power, which for me at least was like a big, like, whoa, this is so much, and reminds me a lot of like his hero stuff back in the day. But as far as this arc goes, I really feel like it was a dramatic shift. I feel like especially when you get towards those later fights, the number of panels a page just kind of disappears. It just zooms down really low, and it starts to feel a lot more like the original series. I really enjoyed it. I think another thing I noticed, I don't know if you would necessarily call this structure, but just as far as like his artwork in general, the sort of variety in choreography is really interesting. It feels like, I mean, I don't want to, guess too specifically, but it kind of feels like he sat down and done a lot of like gestural studying And like the motion conveyed through some of his drawings in this arc is astonishing, really. And at times I would look at it and I would go like, you know, sure, there are some anatomy issues, you know, throughout, and that's understandable. You know, you're doing 40 pages a month or whatever, but like there's stuff in here that is so impactful and so not Toriyama, but in like a good way. Like it's different in an interesting way. Like I said, there's a lot of motion there that I really, really like. Too many speed lines, way too many speed lines.
Sure.
But the drawings themselves, I think, are really impressive in this arc.
And, you know, he does that kind of like when some like the shit hits the fan. There's like the squiggly things in the background, like if something real evil was just said. It's the kind of thing I feel like the animation staff would do, and he's adopted that. I don't feel like Toriyama ever did something like that. It's just I feel like he's pulling from a lot of places.
There were parts as I was reading this, and to help focus, I listen to brown noise when I read, and I felt as though I could hear the action as it was happening, the way that Toyotaro draws it, and the flow of action is so good that it was tricking the lizard part of my brain into thinking that I was hearing what was happening.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I was really taken aback. I mean, I have been very critical of his paneling in previous arcs, and to me, this was such a turnaround. You know, there are certain panels where I go, you know, I've seen that a lot in the past couple of chapters, but you know, it's, you know, it is what it is. It's not a huge deal. But no, I totally agree with Ken. Like the impact and the tension is just nuts. I mean, when we get down to the specifics of the story, I think there's certain ways the battles are written, the strategy involved in them that let him create some really dynamic battles that gave him the freedom to do a lot of crazy stuff drawing-wise that he otherwise hadn't done and wouldn't have done in the past.
As far as his ability to convey motion and stuff like that, there were a couple of points, and one of them we talked about yesterday. We weren't supposed to do that, but we did. Was when Yuzun died.
Yes.
And so many people were confused about what had even happened there. Like, we had to explain it for people.
I mean, myself included. I was reading it, I'm like, where's this going? Where'd that come from? I feel like that's classic Toyotaro.
Well, what made it confusing was the fact that Vegeta made a hand gesture like he was going to fire at him. So people got the impression that he had actually done something. But he hadn't, because he saw what was going to happen, that the thing that Yuzun had kicked into the sky was coming back down and was going to kill him. So he saw that was going to happen, and he didn't actually fire.
And you know what actually threw me off there too was the next page. Iriko's just like, well, anyway, so let's talk about this now. And I'm like, what? Huh?
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of people were confused about that. And another one that really bugged me was actually the climax when Goku finally cracked the crystal. Like, he showed it from, I don't know, 3 or 4 different angles.
Yes.
Like, throughout all of that, I didn't feel any motion at all. It was just like Goku was touching it, you know?
That's really interesting.
And it didn't feel like he was punching it at all.
I totally agree, because like there's a vertical, then a sideways, but they're all like the same point of the motion. I think what he's going for is that like triple take we get in a scene.
Right.
Like, I think to when Goku punches Nappa in the stomach, and we get like the double or triple take on that from different angles. And this is supposed to be something like that, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah, there were motion lines, but like there was nothing actually at the point where his fist touches the crystal. There was no maybe a puff of dust or something, or I don't know, anything to show motion there, and it just felt really static to me.
That's interesting. I really love that moment. I agree that I don't think the multiple takes from different camera angles really works in a manga form. Which again is, like I was saying earlier, I do think he sometimes storyboards his manga instead of...
I don't think it works in anime. Sorry, I just had to get that in there. I really don't, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I kind of love that whole finale. And I just thought the tension running through those panels was amazing, and I absolutely love that big spread where you have like the close up of Goku's big phantom form thingy and everything around that. I just thought was astonishing. I'm sure we'll have thoughts on that specifically, but yeah, I don't really have that many issues with the art itself there.
You know, I'm sure there's a lot more about art and composition we'll get to when we talk to specifically more about some of these moments, I want to turn things a little bit to playing with lore. Ken, I think back to some of the conversations and even some of the tweets we had. It was chapter 49 where within like 2 pages, Toyotaro clears up. Eska's like, oh yeah, Murray made me the successor, and so that's why Dragon Balls still work. Like, there are all these things that Toyotaro does that shows he's paying attention to what he wrote, sure, but he's also really living in the world of Dragon Ball and expanded Toriyama lore. Back in Victory Mission, obviously, he threw in tons of little cameos here and there. He's doing what he can here with that, and I feel that's through using other characters in the Dragon Ball lore, whether that's Dai Kaioshin, whether that's Oob. There's kind of like a Galactic Patrol Gia-ish reference very, very early on in here. Let me get you guys' thoughts on that. Playing in, this isn't just a new Dragon Ball arc. It feels like a very connected Dragon Ball arc, at least it did to me.
See, somewhere in my notes here, I have written Toyotaro's fast and loose with things. And I felt that
he is,
that's how he was with the lore and with how he communicated how much time was passing. And he was much more focused on, I'm going to draw these elements that are cool and expand on them, but I'm not going to get so caught up in things that it's maybe in his mind to the detriment of the story. Maybe other people would disagree. And I think we see that a lot in that final fight with Oob. Yeah. Where Jaco makes the connection, oh, we need God power, let me go find Boo. And he, there's a whole conversation about how he overhears, I'm not used to saying this out loud, Merusu, that Kid Boo had that power, or Pure Boo, Pure Boo had that power, and so he goes to Boo, but he doesn't know what's his plan there. And as I was rereading that chapter today, I was thinking about that. And had we stopped and walked through Jaco's plan, it would have killed all of that momentum and that intense moment that leads to defeating Moro.
Yeah, it just should have been set up completely differently. Like, they should have talked about the reincarnation or something, when he was there for that story, because he had no reason to think that Boo could help, because he thought that Boo's power was gone, as far as he knew.
Yeah, I agree on that kind of stuff. I also felt the same about Oob's inclusion towards the end. I think as far as lore expansion goes, I guess it is also a callback, but I really enjoyed how, like, when Vegeta goes off to train on Yardrat, the person who trains him is, the person who Goku knew, and like that ties in later to when they're explaining Force Spirit Fission. I think one of the things I was so concerned about in the build up to that reveal of what Vegeta's power was going to be was like, he's going to arrive, but how are they going to explain that to the audience? How are we going to be told what this power is without it feeling like we're stopping, staring the readers in the face and going, this is how this works? And I thought it was a really genius way of going, okay, it's the same person who Goku knew, it's the same training. Goku was aware of this. He didn't, achieve it himself, but he knows what it is. And so we can naturally convey to the readers how this thing works. And I love that. It
was so long ago for Goku. I mean, obviously, how much more powerful are they now? And to that point about Toyotaro showing rather than telling, just going back to that earlier fight that we talked about on Yardrat, where Vegeta points his finger and he goes to fire and he's like, holy shit! He like blows that giant blast ahead. I feel like that was a great moment to really show what's going on there. And just to the point about lore expansion and showing what he knows, tying in the Yardratians from Dragon Ball Online and trying to reconcile these different looks for these characters. Like, that's not what we know they look like from the original series, but he decided to go there.
Yeah, it was after that Yardrat chapter that I guess I started getting really excited about it. And then Therese was like, okay, you're writing the wiki article. And I'm like, okay.
That's true. Jake, let me ask you. So, having been away from it for a while and then coming back to this story, did it feel like a natural extension of the Dragon Ball story? Or did this feel, and this is going to tie into future podcast topics, did it feel kind of toyable AF-y in the, well, I'm going to use this element from the series and I like this character, so I'm going to bring him back here?
Well, expanding on the Galactic Patrol did make it seem like an extension, but I guess the thing that's kind of stuck out to me now that we've got an inkling of what the next arc is going to be, it seems like we've had, so we had the Tournament of Power, which was all about the 12 universes, which was kind of the big idea that was introduced at the end of Battle of Gods. And so it's like all of Super, each arc has in one way or another kind of connected to that, except maybe Resurrection F, but everything else is kind of built on that. And so, but after the Tournament of Power, we had the Broly movie, doesn't involve the other universes. This arc, no other universes, and so far as we can see with Granola, it might change, obviously, but so far it seems to be taking place also in Universe 7. So it seems like they've kind of backtracked from that whole idea for quite a while now at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're just gonna... I guess that's the one thing that stuck out to me as not feeling like a continuation of what we've had before. But I think everything... But, with Mels... that all felt, expanding on the Angel lore, that felt like it was finally paying off stuff that we'd had with Whis, where throughout, there's always been the thing where Whis is stronger than anyone, but he never really fights, and so now we get a proper reason for why that is, beyond him just not wanting to, I guess. And so it sort of retroactively makes previous arcs more dramatic than they were at the time, knowing that he can't fight, rather than just is choosing not to. Like, again, in the Broly movie, where he is actually, for a while, just screwing around with Broly. And you're like, well, when I watched the movie at the time, I'm like, theoretically, we don't even need Gogeta. We could just have Whis take care of this whole situation. But, I guess now, retroactively, we know that's not the case. So I don't know. I guess that makes me happy, but it's also like, maybe that's a bit of lore we should have had earlier on in the course of Super.
So to that point, and kind of going back to the Toyotaro-isms and playing in this world, do we feel like that was sufficiently explained as we got to the end of the arc? As I did my reread yesterday, it was that, so the Great Priest was like, well, so he was going to be erased, but I stepped in a little early to reincarnate him, so that didn't happen. So my reading on that is, independent of the Great Priest, there's some universal force of nature law that was about to erase him. Is that everyone's reading?
When Whis explains it to Goku earlier on, he does say, it's like, this is the only thing that will kill an angel is if they fight. And so the way he says it, he makes it sound like it's some natural process and not just the Great Priest personally stepping in all the time. So yeah, if we go off that, it seems like the Great Priest had to erase him first in order to prevent whatever that automatic process is. Maybe it's just that Whis didn't want to tell Goku that his father routinely kills disobedient children.
Right.
My assumption was that it was the Omni King that was gonna, enforce the law in that case, because that's what usually happens, right?
That's true. I wonder how much is he paying attention though, or does he have his attendants doing it? I guess we could get down a side conversation about that.
See, nobody knows what's going on there. Like, does he actually have thoughts?
Right?
We don't know. It's a big mystery how those two operate together, or three now that we have two Omni Kings.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I feel like with how often there's time travel going on, they're not paying very much attention.
To me, I just assumed it was an automatic thing. I think visually that's what it's trying to convey. Like, as soon as he starts fighting, he starts to go transparent already. So that was just the way I took it.
Something I was thinking of earlier, and I actually just saw this posted on our forum. I think it's a great question. I've thought about this before. The question on the person was asking was, why don't the Dragon Ball Heroes games do more with giving crazy forms to the super characters? Are they, afraid of stepping on the toes or whatever Super does? And I feel like everyone is kind of tiptoeing the line. Both Heroes is and Super is as well. Why isn't another universe coming? I guess it's all those questions of, why doesn't Broly just show up? Why doesn't Jiren just show up? Why don't they use those characters? Are they afraid to use those characters because Heroes is also doing some things with those characters? Or is it just Toriyama and Toyotaro, the way they work? No, this is the self-contained story we want to tell.
I think it's just a case of trying to make the world feel lived in, I suppose. If it's supposed to be so big, do we need to start pulling in every single character ever introduced, into the fold? I think in some cases it might make sense, if you're right down to the wire and you don't really have anyone to it's a cool-on, then maybe you would look to the other universes. But I think it would probably start to feel overly convenient and very fan servicey to start being like, right, well, okay, let's get hit in and
right. Well, then it would just be a Heroes episode because that's what happens. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think Heroes has anything to do with anything that they're thinking about for this super plot.
Sure.
Heroes is off doing its own thing, and they can do whatever, and it just doesn't matter.
I think the other universes would have crowded what is, in some ways, kind of two character-driven stories in this arc.
Yeah.
Goku has a very specific arc that he goes through with perfecting Ultra Instinct, and Vegeta has his arc dealing with the guilt of murdering all those Namekians long ago, and then kind of putting aside his own, this is how a fight should go, versus I'm learning to fight a new way.
Let's talk characters, because I am very much a fan of character interactions, and I will often overlook, whether that's purposefully or ignorantly, other things and important plot points if the character beats make it worth it. Can I stick with you and Vegeta for a little bit? I think we're hinting at
By all means.
With each other. And I mentioned this in the summary. Vegeta begrudgingly goes off to learn wacky techniques after just specifically saying in chapter 49, gimmicky techniques like that never actually get the job done. It was always going to take a brute force to bring down this foe. Vegeta proceeds to go to Yard Rat to learn crazy techniques.
Yeah, after I posted that image, I didn't think that, and I posted it in Discord, I didn't think that was going to pay off in the way that it did. And it seemed to me just kind of like a mistake at first.
Right. There's so many, I want to get to another Piccolo one too, that we feel like are contradictory character moments. And this one felt like that, but did it pay off?
I think so, because it's either the next chapter or the chapter after that, Vegeta kind of doubles down on that.
Yeah.
As he's accepting his defeat right before he decides that he's going to Yard Rat. So I think it was, that was Vegeta's character arc, was I'm very stubborn about this is how a fight should go, brute strength. And even at the end, he's still like, I'm still not going to learn teleportation. I don't care about that. I don't need that. So I don't, he hasn't totally changed at all, but I think it did pay off. I think Vegeta is in many ways the heart and soul of this arc. Not to speak like a hardened Vegeta fan. I do like Vegeta, but this is his arc to me.
Does anyone want to get into the Toyo's Vegeta fanboy kind of angle, which I never really bought or gave much credit to? I don't
really buy it either, personally.
No.
That's all I have to say about it.
No, okay. I've never really considered it.
I just found it very annoying how thoroughly he had Vegeta say, like, don't worry, I'm never, ever, ever going to use teleportation. This is the only time. This isn't going to become a regular occurring thing that will alter my character in any significant way, so just relax.
Yeah, I think that bothered me also. And especially because the way that he set it up at the beginning of the arc, the very beginning of the arc when they're kidnapping Boo, and they have to, Goku and Vegeta have to go help, and Vegeta doesn't want to go with Goku. He's like, I could fly there in 5 seconds, and Goku's like, okay, fine. So Goku teleports, and then Vegeta flies in, right? So he's got this obvious distaste for relying on Goku for that technique. And that seemed to play into that scene when they're all fleeing the planet.
And he's like, Eriko, you, me, let's go.
Yeah, I never, ever, ever thought for a second that he was going to go to Planet Yard Rat and not learn it.
Yeah.
That was obviously the reason to bring him there. He was going to learn it. So, yeah, the explanation after that, after knowing that's why he was going there, yeah, that was annoying.
I don't know. It was worth it to see him in the trash can. That was pretty good.
That was great. I really liked Vegeta in this arc. I have always had a lot of issues with Vegeta in Super because it always feels like we're going in circles with his character. And I felt like bringing it to Namek and him feeling some sort of guilt there was well done. I think when you read that kind of thing on paper, I think I almost look at it on paper and groan a little bit. So I'm like, do we really need that? But then I think the way it was done is very subtle. Like it's only a few panels, He just it's more an insecurity, I think, than like a general guilt. It's like he's there to do his job, and then as he's talking to Namekian, it's almost like he kind of has to, because he feels like almost just so insecure and he's like nervous. He's like, so how do you feel about me being considering what I've done? Like,
tell me how you feel about me.
Yeah, I really love the way that was done. I think the only character that really bothered me in this arc was Piccolo's writing. But like, I hate to be dramatic, but I do think that character's writing was assassinated in this arc.
So let me guess. So there's probably two key things there. One was letting the Macarena gang just do whatever, and then second was probably Vegeta's not one to underestimate his foes.
Yeah, it's some of that. It's just a culmination of everything, really. I feel like I didn't really get Piccolo the character in this arc. I think yeah, it does.
Well,
kind
who
of
should Piccolo be? Because we've been left with Piccolo the uncle, rocking Pan in her little carriage there, or hanging out with Dende. What is Piccolo at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as far as his use goes, that's a fair question. But I think what I expect from his character is that intelligence and wit that we kind of got used to throughout the original series. At least I felt. Whereas in this, I feel like you can explain away some of this stuff, but I think it did start when he lets the Earth trio get away, despite having just had a conversation about there's something going on in space, and then some of the aliens arrive, and you just let them go without really kind of delving into why that happened, other than just glancing at the ship and going, you know what, that's fine, off you pop. I think, kind of shortly after that, he gets grabbed immediately by 7-3, despite knowing what's happened there, and then he apologizes for being sloppy. Then you move on a little bit later, he has that Vegeta never underestimates his opponent line, and you've never changed, Goku, that kind of stuff. It all just feels so, I don't know, it's weird. It's like you have this strange Piccolo who's like forgotten how to fight, which you could explain away, but then also a Piccolo who doesn't know these characters, and it's really strange considering how well I think the other characters are written.
I think if we look at Vegeta's interactions with Moro, Vegeta has clearly stolen Piccolo's memories, so that's why Piccolo doesn't know anything anymore.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah. Is Vegeta going through the same things that Piccolo has gone through as well? I don't know, but then he's also repeating the same Buark stuff of, I've come to accept that I'm going to hell. To what we were talking about, Ken, I liked all those lines from Vegeta, but then him acknowledging, well, I guess it was in response to Moro then, so that was a fair answer of, I know I'm going to hell, so I'll see you there, but you're going there first, which is ultimately a pretty good Vegeta line, so I guess I'll take it.
And also specifically Vegeta doing the exact same thing with Piccolo and Cell with Moro, where it's, before you kill, since I'm going to die anyway, you might as well tell me your whole evil plan.
Sure. Do we want to get into that? Let's talk about some of the callbacks that we've had throughout this arc that are maybe a bit gratuitous. There's so much more I want to talk about, and I'm glad I have this group here, and let's see how long I keep this group with me.
I'm all caffeinated and ready to go.
All right, excellent. So
Same.
Callbacks, I don't even know where to begin. I guess you begin at the end with giving Moro the senzu, and then we just trail all the way back to the beginning of the arc. What were some of those examples that stuck out to you all, and was it okay or was it too much?
I mean, well, Moro himself, like his little backstory is Piccolo and Mutaito. He went on a rampage a zillion years ago. He got sealed away. Now he's been let out. His interaction with Cranberry, that's basically Piccolo and Pilaf. And then, he makes the wish to, in his case, it's to get his magic power back, but it's the same kind of thing as Piccolo wishing to be young again. So I think that kind of started off the arc with, I like the whole Piccolo Mutaito backstory, and think that, most fans today, well, a significant chunk of fans today still aren't familiar with anything pre-Raditz, so, there's some good stuff pre-Raditz, so they might as well recycle it.
I just didn't really care in the end. It's funny, reading monthly, I would pick up on all of these callbacks, and I would be like, can we have something original? And I think this does kind of sum up my thoughts on the arc as a whole, and that, like, reading it monthly, I picked up on loads of little things that didn't really matter in the end, because overall it's quite good, I think. And I felt like that with the callbacks. There are so many of them, but when you mush them all together, I felt like I got something that was its own thing. And maybe that's being too kind, but I walked away yesterday having finished that reread like, you know what, fine. That felt like its own distinct arc, despite the fact you could sit there and go, that's from that, that's from that, that's from that. You know, it's you just chuck it all in a stew and it's another dish.
I just want you all to know that Heath just texted me because he doesn't want to put some audio in and says, I agree with AJ. So there you go.
Oh,
thanks, Heath.
That's not fair. I said I completely agree with AJ.
Oh my God. Are you recording? Because what am I going to do with this audio?
Actually, I am, but it is a very long line of nothing.
Okay.
So enjoy.
To kind of follow up on what AJ's saying, I thought that reading this arc in one go was a completely different experience.
It absolutely
than going
God,
monthly.
yes, it really is.
And like, I remember when we were reading monthly, and this is only a few months ago now, when Merusu disappears, I really didn't care. And I guess I can chalk that up to every month coming out and we're more focused and discussing what's going on with Goku and Vegeta, what is Piccolo saying, and we're not paying attention to this character. But when you read it all in one go, and it's like he's an actual force in the story, and when you get to him disappearing, it hits you, or it hit me at least.
Oh, dude, yes.
In a totally different way, yeah.
I so agree. Like when we got to that sacrifice moment reading monthly, I was just like, I don't know this character. Who is this character? Why do I care about this? And then I reread the arc yesterday, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, what a great character. He is all over this story, and he has his own little thought on it. It's all great, and wow, does that really hit you when he goes? I loved it.
I do want to talk more about characters and Merusu and Moro specifically, but to that's a great point about the reading it as a whole here, and that's why I like recording arc reviews. I feel like we all said when we got to the all right, so the gang comes to Earth to fight, and then they're like, no, we're going to wait for them to train. Then they leave. Then they come back again. And that's when the whole gang gets enlisted in the Galactic Patrol. That seemed to be the point where everyone went, all right, here we go. This is like the end of the Trunks arc where we're going to be here for probably 8 months. But rereading it as a whole, like, yeah, it still slowed down there, but it kept moving for me.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised that the pacing issues I found with this arc were right towards the start. I felt like we were on Namek for ages. And as soon as we got off of Namek and that stuff was kind of done away with, we just zoomed through to the end. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's so interesting because I feel like the beginning of the arc has the best pacing where something like major stuff is just constantly happening, but at a good pace. And yeah, we're there for a while. All right.
It wouldn't be Namek if we weren't there for too long.
I think it was just the endless fighting. I think I just started to get a bit bored of flicking through action panels.
Well, we have a lot of that. All right, they fight and then they lose and then they're still in the same place and then they fight again and then they decide, all right, no, we lost. All right, we're going to regroup and then we're going to fight again. Like we had multiple fights there. We had the multiple fights on Earth waiting for everyone. I just want to wrap up. Does anyone have any other strong feelings about this? Felt like it was such an important issue as it was coming up monthly, but the gratuitous callbacks. And now as we're talking it through, we're like, nah, it's fine.
Well, the big gratuitous callback I don't care for is Roshi's behavior.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Even if it did lead to him fighting blindfolded, which I thought was awesome.
I agree. Is that the best you can do with it? But then why even go there? But I guess you get that out of it. I don't know.
I think there's a part in the Cell arc when Tenshinhan flies off to go help against Cell.
Yeah.
And Roshi almost says something that's kind of like announcing his retirement, that he's done.
Sure.
He's like, remember back when I was the most powerful martial, or something like that. And ever since Resurrection F, they keep trying to just jam him back into the action. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it works. Like it was in Toyotaro's Tournament of Power about him kind of using like a proto-Ultra Instinct.
So good. I love it.
and that's cool. But if you have this galactic threat coming to Earth, why is he the guy you call and not Gotenks, who's off on a monster island?
Well, to be fair, they brought 1817 in for that, and we get a totally normal Yamcha here, like not the butt of any joke, like he's just effective and he does well. And yeah, I guess Goku comes in and helps him and saves him in the end, but he's just doing a good job. I love that. Like, we're here to help you, Agent Yamcha. Like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and Goku's like, did you beat all these guys? And Yamcha's like, yeah, we could, of course. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me a lot of something I was thinking about when I was reading, which is about like character agency. And I think this is also kind of on the subject of callbacks as well, because it's a callback of structure, which is where you have Moro kind of take a back seat, and you have like Sagambo and his like crew as like the mini boss or the mini bosses, kind of like, you know, the Ginyu Force and Nappa or whatever. And I feel like in those arcs, the characters lose their agency kind of because Goku comes in and just sweeps, done. Whereas in this, yeah, he kind of does that ish, but in the case of someone like Sagambo, for example, you know, he doesn't really beat him. You know, Moro just keeps powering him up and up and up until he can't take it anymore. And I feel like that's a subtle difference that I really enjoyed. You know, it's something we've seen before, but it's slightly different. And I felt like that a lot with the way the side battles were structured. Like I think, like for example, the Tenshin Han battle, you know, it could have just been, oh, you have to insult, you know, Metalman. That's the gag again. But it was kind of flipped, and it's like, oh, Tenshin Han doesn't know how to insult people, so now Chaozu has to come in and save the day a bit. You know, it's.
I was thinking like that's actually Chaozu's character that I feel like we haven't had since the 22nd Budokai.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. And it could have so easily have just been the same gag over and over again.
I was going to say that my reread experience has been very different from everybody else's because I have been writing chapter summaries for the wiki.
Yeah.
So it's like an extra grind, and it took me like...
Yeah, it's slow.
It took me about a month to get through it because I have problems with brevity. Anyway, the part where everybody on Earth has to fight was where I got excited. I was having fun. And, you know, I'd already read it. I read it as it came out every month.
Sure.
But I was just, you know, I would read the chapter every month and then forget about it until the next one came out. So I loved that. And I love the Chaozu bit in particular. And, he really did find a legitimate use for Chaozu that wasn't just like forcing him in there. But where I really checked out of that was just Sagambo himself. Cause like you said, Goku came in and cleaned up. So I guess they felt like they had to give him, you know, somebody below Moro to deal with. It took him a little bit more time, but it was just boring.
Let's talk about all these other characters, because there's some important ones. In fact, one leads directly into the new next arc right now. Of most importance are probably just, Sagambo and 7-3. And we've got some others. We got Shimoreka, we've got Yunba, and they're all fine. Sagambo really slowed things down there at that part in the story. Let's talk about the designs of these characters, and then that can ultimately lead us into Metsu and Moro. Were these Dragon Ball characters? I think is the only way I can phrase this question.
I think they're Dragon Ball GT characters. Which is fine. I mean, we know Toyotaro's a fan of GT. It's just when you look at, even just at Moro's ship, that is a very GT-inspired design versus...
God, it's so funny you say that, because like when I was reading this arc and we were going from like planet to planet and seeing loads of different stuff in space, and along with the new chapter where we're like off doing other space stuff, I was thinking like, this is very GT, but I'm kind of enjoying it.
It's a grand tour.
But yeah, I mean, design-wise, I think it kind of varies. I think you have stuff like 7-3, who's just, you know, hit with horns and black eyes, you know, whatever, it's fine. I do agree, someone like Sagambo is straight out of GT. I don't think there was anyone who I would say didn't feel like Dragon Ball, other than maybe Moro himself, who I just struggle to place anywhere in Dragon Ball. I like his design, but
Moro is from Digimon.
Is it? All right.
Well, the planet-to-planet thing may be GT-like, but all of the planets were inspired by something that came from Toriyama. Well, not necessarily from Toriyama. Some of it was filler. Like, Katerpi, his planet was in there somewhere. And then there was the planet Zune, except for Toyotaro also used the anime filler designs for some of Babidi's henchmen, put them on the planet too, even though those designs weren't in the manga. We just had Pui Pui.
Yeah, what the hell was with Zune? Why was that even there? I guess I want to use a real place that's been mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And he also used a Toriyama setting design for GT that was never used in the show for the planet where the girls were fighting the energetic beasties, as Viz translated it.
Got it.
So everything was taken from something, because I guess because you only have 28 planets left, you have to pretend like there's only unlimited number.
Sure.
I was thinking about why Planet Zune, but I think Pui Pui is so instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
That you see his species, and then at the end when they wish everyone back to kind of signal, oh, all the other planets are back too, they show Zune again. And I think it's just something for the audience to latch onto.
Okay, all right. We got to stop there because, yeah, everyone's back. What was that deal with, like, all right, the Namekians have been dead for a while, but I guess their life force was strong enough that just the dissipating energy...
That was really strange. I thought the weirdest bit was the line that was something along the lines of, like, the Dragon Balls... This wasn't verbatim, but it was essentially like the Dragon Balls stop their bodies from decaying or something like incredibly morbid. Right, okay.
Yeah, the Dragon Balls were supposedly dead, right? Because they had just been used. So they were just rocks, but they kept everybody from rotting.
It's one of those things somehow. Like the more he tries to talk his way out of it, the worse it gets.
Thank you, magical rocks.
I was so sure that Toyotaro was going to make that group of Namekians coming back a plot point, because why do it at all if the rest of them just get wished back later? And I still think maybe it's, I'm hopeful, maybe it's not a Namekian Book of Legends situation and we'll get payoff later.
I wish I just saved a picture of you just looking off to the side with your fingers crossed. That was so good.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Something I'd love to ask you guys about, I guess it's off the back of talking about designs, is about the moves these characters had. Something that I really enjoyed about the fights with these guys was that there was some degree of strategy to them. In some cases, it was just, punching wins, but there was like a layer to it. Like, for example, when Gohan and Piccolo take on 7-3, they realize, if we take him on one by one, he's just going to keep swapping between our different absorbed powers, and it'll just be a stalemate. But if we fight together, then we'll beat him, and that's when you get that cool Masenko Sapo thing, which was just great. Or you have the Krillin fight where he flings a load of those Kienzan and just like anticipates that the enemy will dodge and just like vanishes and uses like an after image thing to like trick him. Like there was a lot of cool stuff like that I just really enjoyed, and it was necessitated by these unusual moves that the enemies had. I thought that was really cool.
Was that the first time he used the homing Kienzan?
It's a great question.
I believe so.
That stood out to me in this reread was, Frieza.
Because, it was a Frieza thing, yeah. I mean, you have to imagine he's perfected it. He's been training.
He used it in the Super anime.
Well, that's not canon.
What now? I feel like we're dancing around the main antagonist, who I forget who said it earlier, was taking a backseat to everything but Moro. Yeah. So he's the main villain of this arc, and we're talking about everyone but him. We have a great interview that Ian Cypher translated on the site with Toyotaro talking about how he designed Moro, how he ended up going with this goat design and did this like inverted antler kind of thing. Moro is certainly an interesting design. AJ, you were saying that I think you feel like you can't place him as a Dragon Ball character at all.
No, he's just so weird looking. I don't know. Like we've obviously had designs that are related to animals in a way, or slugs. But I don't know. He just, something about him never really stood as Dragon Ball to me until you got to his final form thing, where he just kind of looks a bit silly, and at that point, I just lost a bit of interest in him visually. So I don't know that it was necessarily a bad thing that he wasn't Dragon Ball-y, but I definitely didn't look at him and would immediately go, yeah, that's definitely from Dragon Ball.
He does look exactly like a Digimon called Mephismon, who's based on Mephistopheles.
Okay.
Which I think they're just drawing from the same source, because it's a kind of generic goat type demon. Despite the fact that actually, in my case, probably because he looks so much like a Digimon, I did like his design. At least, I think kind of like AJ, once he becomes Cell with horns, it's a little bit... I wanted to keep more of the goat features, because we haven't had a main antagonist who looked that much like an animal So that felt new.
Yeah, I love the long snout and the times that he would kind of like take a deep breath and look up at the sky and talk. I think the stuff with him, the framings of him I like the most are his conversations with Cranberry on Namek, where Cranberry's like trying to talk his way out of the situation. He's like, oh, you can just tell things. Oh, and Moro will just like side eye him. I love that stuff. That's when he looked his best.
I like his early designs. I like his abilities, but he has no personality besides being an evil guy who's evil.
Is that okay, though?
Well, it's not what I want. But...
I mean, coming off of our conversations about Jiren in the previous arc.
Yeah, it has been a while in Super since we've had a new main antagonist who's just straight up bad. I mean, we had Beerus, who's neutral, and then Frieza, who isn't a new character, but is straight up evil. And then, well, I mean, then there's the tournament arc, and then Black and Zamus. But, so that was, I mean, they felt new. They had more motivation to them besides, I don't know what Moro's motivation is besides he wants to rule the universe and eat planets. I don't know. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not gratuitously terrible, but I hope that the next arc, the villain has more to him than that. Toriyama's had the thing he says where it's like, oh, I kind of try and give the bad guys something likable about them. And so with Moro, I don't think there's anything like that to latch on to his personality.
I thought it was a misstep not to give him a backstory having to do with the gods of destruction, given that his whole thing is he wants to eat planets.
I think it was a misstep not to give him any backstory besides the fact that he was put in prison. I mean, where did he come from?
I was going to say, it turns into a revenge arc, but he doesn't really go for revenge against Daikaioshin. Like, he's happy to kick his ass, but he doesn't focus on that.
Well, he's a forgive and forget type guy.
I think I might be largely with Mike on this if I'm grasping his opinion. It's that, like...
I love how you're like, I don't know what Mike thinks.
You kind of hinted at something I think I agree with, and I'm not sure. And it's that I think, like, I personally agree with everything that Jake has just said. There should have been something more to him, but then I think about the stuff like what you're talking about, where it's like there's something to the way he talks and acts that kind of makes me forget that he doesn't have much to him. Like, I love that side-eye stuff. I do love the bit with Cranberry where he's like, you can't lie to me. and I love how he spends just like the entire arc just being really cheesy with silly food puns, because it reminds me a lot of the stuff I really enjoyed from Goku Black in the anime version, where he won't shut up about main meals and delicious stuff and whatever. Sure. I don't know. I really enjoy that stuff. And so I felt like even though he, as a character, has nothing to him, he has a presence that meant that I didn't find him just plain boring.
My favorite Moro is Planet Moro. After he absorbs or becomes one with the planet and he goes crazy.
He just talks in crazy laughs and nothing else.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. That's my favorite
Which again
Moro.
is, self-destruction Cell.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I don't know, with Cell, the going crazy bit was just really quick. I don't know. I guess it's kind of drawn from that, but it amused me.
I do like all the giant hands he has at the end.
That is pretty good. And we get one of the best moments probably in the entire arc, which is Whis not even looking, just finger off to the side, like, oh, we're still at that level, aren't we? Okay. Like, to the point earlier about Whis could just shut everything down, but, well, I guess he can't. And that was in self-defense, and that was just, it's not even... Like, Moro's not even a nuisance to Whis. I like that. I am not one for the scaling, but I think that really helps keep things in perspective. The Angels are still just that much better. Angels, we have to talk about Merusu. I know there are some people on the call who are not fans of the haircut, and I would like to say that those people are wrong. He has a wonderful design, and he is a good boy, and no one can talk badly about my son, Merusu.
I love Maris.
I liked his design a lot better after Jocko pointed it out.
I don't really like his design. I mean, his design is fine. He's a little bit nerdy. That's fine. But I love the character.
What do you like about his character? I enjoyed him a lot. I liked him a lot early on because of the Galactic Patrol stuff. They telegraphed from the start that, I mean, we all knew he was going to be related to an angel in some kind of way, and what capacity, who knows, but right off the bat we kind of got that. So for me, it was the Galactic Patrol lore, like, oh, he's in charge of 104 sectors, he's the best, this is awesome. What about him to you was special, Therese?
I don't know, he was just he was like the adult in the room guy who was very unassuming, no arrogance there, just a really nice guy.
Got the job done.
Stuff together. Yeah. And he wasn't boring. You'd think a character like that would be boring, but he never was. He was just kind of comforting,
Do you think that was coming from Toriyama or Toyotaro? Because we know Toyotaro designed him. Do you think anything from Toriyama was coming through in there?
Probably not. Not much anyway. But that's fine.
I love the mystique around him. Mm-hmm. In a way that I feel like this is where Toyotaro messed up hard on Zamasu and Black. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of mystery in his telling of that story, but here, very early on, you start sprinkling in that maybe Merusu knows more than he should.
Yes.
Like, he knows about Buu splitting. There was something else I don't have written down here, but he knew things he shouldn't know.
Ultra instinct-y kind of things.
Yeah, he knew who Goku and Vegeta were, which was, like the Goku and Vegeta. Yeah, but I loved Vegeta's little asides, in the beginning when he was still mysterious. Mm-hmm. Vegeta was the one who was freaking out about his obvious power,
I think we get a lot of good moments with him with regard to power, whether it's Vegeta's comments, whether it's that scene where Goku goes in for the hit and Jocko's like, you were really going in for a hit. It's like, yes, I was going in for a hit. That's the point of what I just did. I think all those moments with Merusu really lent him the authority, which I think backs up where we go with that character, which was good. But to your point, Trez, he's just a nice guy. He's genuinely a good dude. He came here to learn and he found a sense of justice, and he's just trying to do right by the world while also trying to do his job. It's admirable.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite component of it. Like, I just think in any type of media, like celestial beings having like moral conflicts is just like the coolest thing ever. And I agree, like the showcases of power were really cool. I think the standout for me was when they were in the room of spirit and time, and like they're about to go all out, and like the like angel like halo thingy like around his neck starts to appear, and then they get cut off, and it's just I don't know, I really enjoyed that stuff. And Team Bowl Cut, that stuff is great.
Team Bowl Cut, is that what we're doing? Hashtag on this one?
I think one of my favorite things Merusu does is when he pulls out his staff and then uses it as a rifle.
Yeah, it's so good.
I'm sorry, if you're going to say Team Bowl Cut, we should probably clarify that we are not white supremacists, because that's a white supremacist thing.
Oh. All right, don't do that. I didn't know. Never mind.
Okay. Team the block fringe? Not as catchy.
That
works. Talking about the weapon, I think that ties back to that like triple panel I was talking about earlier, where he's coming down in for the hit. He's got good motion. He's twirling the staff around. Those were the kinds of things where I felt the movement from Toyotaro on the page there, usually involving Merusu. So
yeah, the whole chapter was amazing.
I'm one to probably read too much into things. But on this reread, I thought that maybe there's a kind of follow through with Merusu that might be foreshadowing something with Whis, in that when Whis is talking about how can Goku beat Moro now that he's become one with the planet, and Whis says like, I know what he needs to do, but can he figure it out? And then he's content to just watch. But then as he gets called away by the Grand Priest, he stops and pops over and makes a point. Goku, here's what you need to do before leaving, in interfering in a way that kind of maybe goes against what the Grand Priest would prefer.
How much, this is getting ahead of ourselves literally, but how much are we going to do with Mr. Priest, especially compared to, I think, over to the Heroes manga, where Goku goes and trains with the Great Priest and comes back in his outfit. Now that Heroes has already done that, is that a route we can go over here?
That was always going to be a little bit too much fan service for Super, I think. So that's why it's in Heroes.
Too obvious.
Yeah.
So Ken, where do you think that's going then? Is it, rather than me trying to guess, you tell me.
I want ramifications, more ramifications with these gods. You know, if
because we don't have ramifications for Dragon Balls in life anymore. So is this where you go with that?
Yeah, and we've gone into the multiverse now, right? So a logical progression of that is to explore more of the gods. Where can you move beyond what the multiverse is? Move into a realm beyond that. And I would like to see more, you know, early on in the series, at least in the anime, maybe not so much in the manga. Whis' training, accepts to train Vegeta as a future god of destruction. Where is that storyline ever going to pick up again? Where I just want to see more of the gods. I was really glad, though, that in this arc, there was no Omni King until the very end.
Yeah.
I think he's someone who you want to sprinkle in. And even Whis and Beerus go something like 7 chapters not appearing in this story. And it was just nice to have a break from them for a little bit. But I do want to start seeing, now that we've seen what can happen with Merusu, like, where can we take that further with these gods?
I feel like I have 3 questions going off of what you just said there. The main one would be, all right, we want to see what they can do with the angels and storytelling around there. But it's ultimately always going to come back to Goku and Vegeta. So is the only angle left there being that Vegeta becomes a god of destruction? Yeah, I don't know. What would you do with a story like that still comes back to our 2 heroes here?
I don't know. I think
Oob, eventually.
I think a lot of stuff that comes to my mind has kind of been done in Heroes in a way. I feel like as soon as you introduce the idea of like gods and angels, you then start thinking about, well, what about like fallen angels and tainted gods and whatever. And at that point, it's hard not to think about how the characters are now, you know, reaching godly powers. So at this point, do we then need to have our characters start involving themselves in like trials and tribulations that the gods and angels would normally face and have them team up together and fight stuff like that? But isn't that kind of what Heroes did with like the demon realm stuff? I don't know.
I just read that manga and I can't answer that question.
I think that Super can do its own version of a god story that's less fan servicey and maybe a little bit less shallow than Heroes.
Probably.
They just have to come up with a good idea. You know, they're not going to go off in a fan servicey direction just because, you know, they know the fans want more of the gods.
Yeah, I mean, the Heroes' take is always going to be throw a million characters into the story to make it work. Like, let's bring in all the gods of destruction, and Jiren and Hits there.
I mean, I do want them in the long run to do something more with the Great Priest, but I don't really know what that is. I mean, I don't want him to be evil. That would be stupid, but I'm not sure what.
Sure.
I guess I can't think off the top of my head what an interesting angle would be beyond him training Goku or him being evil. So, yeah, we just have to hope.
Which half of that's already been done.
Yeah, we'll probably have to have something to do with whatever his job is, you know. What does he actually do besides babysit the Omni Kings? You know, does he have any kind of plan for, you know, how events should go in the universes? Is he overseeing the gods in any particular kind of way? And we don't really know the answers to any of those questions, so it's hard to come up with what the plot would be, you know?
I want to talk about the future of the series, but also talk about the story at the same time. I feel like the angle there is Oob, who we've had mentioned before. Oob was mentioned in the television series, and Toyotaro made a bigger effort to show him earlier on, and he's a character in this arc. I mean, not much, but he's certainly there and has his moments. The elephant in the room is always, are we going to get to End of Z? And as we see in the next arc, well, we probably have something before the 28th Tenkaichi Budokai. Is Oob a potential character for Toyotaro? What do you guys think?
I personally doubt it. Yeah, I didn't really expect...
Fan service callback? Is that all he was for this?
No, I wouldn't call it a fan service callback. I think he was, you know, genuinely trying to recontextualize the epilogue of Dragon Ball. So it wasn't just for fan service or a callback. It was just, you know, kind of helping fans to get to the place where they can see the epilogue of Dragon Ball as being something that really does incorporate everything that has happened in Super.
Yeah, these characters truly are that strong. Oob is that important. I know that's been a somewhat common criticism.
Yeah, and a lot of people expected there to be a time skip after this arc and to go straight to the epilogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never really expected Oob to be in the next arc.
Maybe it is hard for them to do anything. Maybe it is hard for them to make Oob a main character without it seeming too much like GT.
That's true, and they're also not there yet, so they can't do too much with them.
In the long term.
Yeah.
If angels live forever, why do they need trainee angels? Are they making more universes or so they need like more angels? Is that going to be a future plot point?
Maybe there are other angels that do like completely different things that we don't know about.
Admin angels?
Middle management angels? I don't know.
It's the drop plot point about the previously destroyed universes, 13 or
18. Well, there used to be 18, so 6 of them were destroyed.
So did he come from that? Who knows? This is too much. Too much to get into with that. We were talking about characters earlier. I want to talk about Cranberry a little bit. I feel like this was peak Toyotaro, where he took a character that was on the side of a page and made him a named real character in this arc. I actually loved that, and Cranberry became one of my favorite characters in this arc just for that reason. Like, you truly knew his motivations and his history, and we got that awesome 2-page bonus chapter explaining and he was the one who Zarbon kicked and killed, and now he's back. Like, that's really, really dumb. That's equally really, really awesome that you pulled that character and brought him into this arc.
I mean, speaking of villain motivation, he's just a guy who wants to get away.
I think it makes the universe of Dragon Ball feel more alive, especially knowing that Cranberry was alive this whole time. We've seen him before, and also the entire time the series has been going, he met Jaco off page.
Yeah. And he got locked up, and and he's been telling all these other guys about this crazy planet with Dragon Balls.
Yeah, and they recontextualize even Frieza's mission to Namek, saying, hey, this is top secret.
Yeah. Changing
how many people were supposed to know about that, even though in the anime there's like 700 people who come with Frieza.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I really like that stuff. But if it's a very One Piece like Oda thing to do. It's like, hey, remember that one guy from like a bajillion chapters ago? Yeah, he's now relevant and a thing. Like, I don't know. I think that stuff's cool, and I don't know that you often see it in Dragon Ball. So yeah, it was refreshing.
Yeah, I don't want to see it again. I liked it this one time. That was fine. I definitely don't want to do it.
Esco was another example of that, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, I guess so. I totally missed that, though.
Yeah, he just, apparently, he's based off of, he appears for one panel at the end of the Buu arc when they go get the Dragon Balls.
And it seems like they're friends, so that's good. Him and Dende. It's good stuff. I like that Dende actually has a friend.
If we're going back to characters, I have a couple of questions I'd like to pick your brains on. How did you feel? This is going to be a very leading question. How did you feel about some of the arguably Flanderization of some of these characters? I give one example that bothered me a little bit, and that's with Android 18, who is essentially, for the entire arc, all she really says is money, money, money. And when they're in a really bad situation and it's meant to be like really serious right at the end, all she has to say is, I'm not being paid enough for this. And that was kind of it.
I don't know. I just sticking with her real quick. I feel like it's been that way since the 90s, though. I mean, you think to something like movie 11, which is
her
looking for money.
If that's the model they're using, if they're going off movie 11, we're all in trouble.
All right.
Hey.
I know we had some fans here.
So this is the thing that popped into my head, where it's that Toyotaro, I think, can quite often struggle to decide whether he's writing characters in the spirit of the original manga or whether he's taking Toei versions of things. And I think that was really clear for me with a very specific section for Goku. I think for the majority of the arc is absolutely fine, but I think when he first arrives back on Earth, it's almost like you get Toriyama's Goku and then a Toei Goku back to back. He sets down, he's very serious, and he talks about like, this is what I've trained for. I don't know much about Moro. I really need to be careful, and you can sort of just feel that tension building up. It reminds me so much of like the Frieza arc, where he has that very serious discussion with the gang when he's finally cleared the Guinea people away. And that's here in the Moro section. And then it just is entirely dissipated by Krillin asking you, like, are you not worried? And Goku's just like, waku waku, I'm really excited. And like, I get it. That's part of his character. But it felt to me, at least, like something Toei Goku would say. And when I say Toei Goku, I'm talking about modern Toei Goku, because obviously old Toei Goku was a lot more superhero-y, whereas now they've gone all the way in the other direction.
Yeah, we've gone from like Toriyama Goku to Koyama Goku to by committee Toei Goku for sure. I mean, going off that, Toyotaro's probably in a pretty tough place. I mean, as a fan who grew up on it, all of those Gokus are within him and are a part of him and probably influence the way he writes that character. Meanwhile, you have the person who wrote him coming in and revising dialogue and ears. It's like he's in a really tough position.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I suppose it depends like what you've been consuming lately as far as how much that stuff bothers you. I think I've been doing a lot of manga stuff in my personal time, so I think reading that sort of hard switch was like, oh, right, okay, which Goku is this? Okay.
It didn't bother me, but it did stand out to me in that moment. In my notes here, I even wrote down second Waku Waku of the arc. Because this whole arc, it's been such a totally different Goku, toned down into the situation. Mm-hmm. This is dangerous. I don't know how this is going to go, how this is going to play. And then the 2 times he does say Waku Waku, I think he's training with Merusu, and then when he's talking to Kuririn. And it's... Mm-hmm. So it didn't bother me so much because there's been so little of that with Goku in this arc. But yeah, it's definitely... It did kind of take me aback when I read it.
I know Teres has thoughts on how Toyotaro writes Goku's dialogue.
You said my name wrong.
Dang it.
It's Teres. Yeah, but you say everything wrong, so that's okay.
It evens out.
Yeah, my problem with Goku is just that he talks too much. Mm. Like there's so many times when he's just saying stuff that's not necessarily very Goku-like, and he didn't really have to say anything at all. Like, there's a lot of stuff that could have been left unspoken, and a lot of dialogue that just doesn't do anything. It's like filler, you know? Like, Goku is saying things, and now he's saying things, and none of it's important.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes out as just being very out of character, you know? Would Goku really say that?
Yeah, I do know what you mean with that. And it did remind me a little bit of a sort of general criticism I had, which is about that kind of fluff dialogue. And I think it speaks to whether Dragon Ball works in this long format, 45 pages, whatever it is now.
I was going to say, at some point I had done the math on how many pages this arc was. I mean, well, for this arc, you can easily do it because we know how many pages each chapter are. But in comparison to things like the Buu arc and the Cell arc, and like, this is a long arc, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Like when I was going back over like the original manga, like I said, I've been doing a lot of reading of that lately. I noticed, or was rather quite taken aback by how so much of the fighting is relegated to just a couple of pages, and then you're back somewhere else with more narrative. Whereas with this format that Super's in, you have that same structure, but everything is drawn out. And so like, I can almost feel Toyotaro like, right, I've done like 10 to 15 pages of fighting now. And he's had to like throw in dialogue, obviously, in there. So you're literally not just staring at panels for the entire time, just drawings. But a lot of that dialogue is kind of like what Teres was saying, where it's just strange observations or like out of character things, just very generic shonen fluffy, he's so strong, impossible, just that kind of stuff. It's one of the things I understand, but I'm just like, this, it's the limitations of the format. What do you do about that?
I also felt like the Goku fluffing up Vegeta thing went a little bit too far sometimes. And, I like it when Goku is proud of Vegeta. That's great. That's very good. But sometimes he just kind of gushes about it, and it's a little bit weird.
I was just running some quick math. So if we assume that an original Dragon Ball chapter was...
It's like 14 pages.
We're between 50 and 60 pages per month of the original Dragon Ball. Toyotaro's doing 45, so it's actually fewer pages than the original run would be monthly, but it is a monthly story. And AJ, I think you're totally right, where Toyotaro's looking at this is the span of pages I have to fill. And my fights can't just be 3 pages and that's it. That's again, I've already said, but that's a really tough position to be in. I don't envy Toyotaro.
Yeah, it's really hard because when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, is it really that different? Because he's kind of, like you were saying, he's doing fewer pages, but the way you structure a story, where you place cliffhangers in certain moments, changes so dramatically. It's so hard. You can't so it's a tough one to try and think about on a sort of equivalent level.
Every chapter has to end with dun dun dun, next chapter coming on the 20th, 21st, as opposed to the original Dragon Ball, where it'd be like, I guess that was the chapter. Go ahead, Ken.
AJ, I'd feel remiss not to talk about Boruto here. During the run of this arc, AJ put out a video going through the Boruto anime.
Wait, hold up. AJ does videos?
He did.
Once in a blue moon.
But I watched it, and it's a great video. You should check it out. And it got me to go and read the Boruto manga, which runs in, I guess it ran in Shonen Jump, Weekly Shonen Jump for a little bit, or ever, like once a month, and then now it's in V-Jump. And so it comes out same day as Super. So every day that comes out, every month, I read that and Super on the same day. And for a long stretch, it was Boruto, I think, is like the shining golden example of how you should pace a monthly story.
Yeah, I agree. And I should probably clarify for listeners going, what the hell? The bad things you've heard about that story are most likely from the anime. And if you don't like the manga, fair enough. But please don't think we're crazy for saying that. It's a very different product. But no, I do agree. And I think I know where you're going with this, where it's like that story, the way that's structured, I guess doesn't really have the same issues that Super does. So maybe it is a case of how you write things differently. Because I guess the differences there are that Boruto is, I think, first and foremost, exposition. There are many layers to the story. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of character work, and the action either comes in chunks, or it's like a little bit here and there. Whereas I think with the way Dragon Ball is, it's an action-first story. So I guess maybe that changes things. He has to put emphasis on different areas. I don't know.
It's scary. It's because that's also a sequel series by a successor. I fell off the Naruto TV series and the filler before Majin Sasuke. So I have no idea what any of this is. But yeah, for those who are following both, I'm sure there are a lot of comparisons you could probably draw there.
I have some notes about the passage of time in this arc. The Devil's Corpse and I were going on about this yesterday as I started my reread yesterday. And it's just really confusing about how much time is passing. From, like, you have when Bulma steps in to say 1 week has passed since Goku and Vegeta left Earth, and then it's unclear how long they were knocked out. It's unclear exactly how long they were asleep, because Murray he says 3 days,
3 days, yeah.
But are those Namekian days? What is a Namekian day? How can we interpret that?
If they don't specify, you have to assume it's Earth.
Yep.
Yeah. Viz's translation of something Piccolo says later was, it's been a few days since I stopped sensing Goku and Vegeta. And then it's like, what is Merusu doing after he drops Buu off at Galactic Patrol headquarters? And then it's like it takes him no time at all to get from there to Namek when he shows up suddenly. So it's just very confusing about where things are located in space, how long it takes people to get there, how much time has passed, when did the time pass in different spots. But from there, it's pretty good. It's 1 week, it takes them 1 week to get from New Namek to Yardrat, Yuriko and Vegeta. Mm-hmm. Vegeta lands on Yardrat, a few days pass, and then Goku goes to train with Merusu. They train for 2 months. Jocko buys them a month and some change with some great bluffing.
Yep.
So he can watch an anime movie. And then so Gohan says, we've already gathered Earth's Dragon Balls, which they don't ever address what they do with them. I assume they use them to recharge Namek's Dragon Balls, because when Beerus and Whis are talking to the Grand Priest, it says the events of that conversation happened a few days earlier, which would have been right as they were defeating Moro. But Namek's Dragon Balls take 130 days to recharge, so it's just, this is where I talk about when Toyotaro got very fast and loose with the way he was telling what was happening here. And it makes me think, at the beginning of Volume 9, Toyotaro talks about how he added in some extra pages for that final fight with Jiren for the graphic novel version. Mm-hmm. We know he did that with Vegito versus Zamasu.
Right.
So I'm hoping we'll maybe get a little bit of extra just explaining what happened exactly. But of course, I'm so wiki-minded, so I have to think of it this way. I think maybe for like the normal reader, they don't care. But for me, like it really is a sticks in my craw, to use an old phrase.
I was just going to say, hearing you say that, I agree I agree that could be an issue, especially from the perspective of someone who is working on a wiki. I personally didn't have too much trouble with how things were placed in the sort of time span of this arc, but I do know exactly what you mean, where it's like, right, I have to write this down and put it in a sort of scientific way or whatever you want to call it, and that must be hard.
I'm pretty wiki-minded too, but I'm also kind of numb to it at this point. After Broly, Broly just killed absolutely any sense of chronology that the series had. It was just murdered. So yeah, now I guess I'm over it and I'm focusing on other details.
Yeah, I mean, reading it through in one go, the timeline issues didn't really stand out to me. But maybe we will get more pages explaining it. Not even manga pages, just like text pages in the collected edition, just laying it all out.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, we haven't gotten anything like that. All we've gotten have been the 2-page bonus chapters. We got as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Jump Victory Carnival, and that was oh, by the way, Broly happened, in addition to the single page saying Broly happened. We got the Cranberry story, and we got the What Has Frieza Been Up To story, which is, I guess, an important question.
I think the very final thing I noticed, to kind of tie this to Frieza, that I noticed in my reread, was the way that they phrased the wish about how everyone was brought back. So does that mean Shimureka's back? Does that mean Cranberry's back? Did Cranberry wake up on Namek? And if so, is he going to be how maybe we get back to Frieza at some point?
Yeah, there's big questions about where do we go next? How do we use these other characters? Keep bringing everyone back. What do you do with them?
We get the narrator tells us what the wish is, but we don't have like the exact wording that whoever said it used. So
sure.
Yeah, I guess who knows?
I think one thing I was curious about, this might be me just trying to maybe give Toyotaro more credit than he deserves, but something I noticed on my reread was about the way that the Yardratian powers are kind of conveyed to us. They talk about how it's like this thing between your body and your spirit, or your body and your ki, and how they're out of balance, and how putting them together, increases your power and whatever. And I guess I saw parallels there to the Ultra Instinct training mantra that Whis would talk about a lot. And then shortly after that explanation, or I guess kind of within that explanation, you have the Elder reveal that his giant form kind of thing was just part of that power. And when that happened, I was like, well, is that Toyotaro's way of kind of explaining what happens with giant Goku at the end of the arc? Is that like his little way of informing the audience of what that thing is? Yeah,
rather than out of the blue, this is what he did, but like this is an extension of pure spirit control.
Yeah, so I was thinking, like, is that what that was supposed to be, or is it really you just thought, well, we'll just do Big Goku because it's cool, So I was just wondering if anyone else had
I think you're probably right.
Yeah, that's what I assumed, just reading it straight through.
The way you phrase it seems exactly like something I would read from Caramel Mama, so it must be.
Yeah, exactly. It must be true. That must be it.
Well, I mean, I don't know why anybody would assume from the beginning that it was just random. I guess it reminded some people of Naruto. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I have no connection to
but that's what everybody was talking about, and maybe they got so focused on that it seemed random to them. But I just don't see any reason to assume that it is,
I also feel like, well, everything has to happen for a first time once, so maybe we'll learn something more about this in the future. I mean, we have a new arc, and if Goku can just do Ultra Instinct now, maybe, I guess, maybe they'll walk that back too, but he's got to have some other stuff he can do, and maybe extra spirit control even better than Vegeta can do because he's Goku, and that's the route they'll go.
Speaking of Ultra Instinct, when we were reading this monthly, I didn't really care for how Toyotaro was treating Ultra Instinct.
Okay.
But going through this in one go, again, everything's better reading this arc as one go. He's making Ultra Instinct his own thing, and he's making it make sense internally within his own continuity that he's established.
Sure.
Of Sign being this form that's you are unbalanced, because we do see Goku use a lot of emotion in that form.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He finally gets perfected Ultra Instinct, and his pecs can flex to break someone's arm. And I came out of it really enjoying what he did with that form, and looking forward to what he does with that. And I guess Vegeta's got a special Super Saiyan Blue form.
Yeah, he got that in the Tournament of Power, didn't he?
Yeah, Gohan calls it out directly. Oh, it's that version of Super Saiyan Blue. So I was like, oh, I guess that was a thing that happened.
I think I asked this earlier, but now that we've had this long conversation about it, I don't know how I want to describe this. I feel like I have to explain the question before I ask the question. But now that this is the first manga original story arc, which is the format that the series originally was, does this feel like a true successor to the previous Dragon Ball franchise? Or does this still just feel like Dragon Ball by committee?
I mean, this is the first arc that felt like an actual arc in the manga. I mean, the Battle of Gods thing, it was kind of like a highlights reel. Then they skipped Resurrection F, which is maybe the best version of that arc, but still. Then,
Agreed.
Universe 6, it started pretty good, and then I think, like Ken was saying, it's like at that, he starts arcs well, and then they kind of peter out. So Universe 6 has a really rushed conclusion, and then the Future Trunks has an incredibly long conclusion, and then Tournament of Power also really rushed. And so this actually felt like a thing you could read from beginning to end and have it all cohere, and it doesn't just feel like a manga adaptation of a movie or an anime.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, like, at least for me, it's the best Super arc by a long shot. I also agree that, it's the first proper arc. I think that'll upset Tournament of Power fans, but it's a proper story. I loved it, frankly. And I think it's the first arc that feels complete, not just in terms of structure, like you were saying, but also it feels like the first arc that's complete in terms of quality. Like, I think, at least from what I can gather from this conversation, we agreed that it's a good arc, and I think the issues with it are small blips. Whereas I feel like in other discussions we've had, it's like, okay, well, the Future Trunks arc was good up to a point, and then it died. Or like the Tournament of Power was all right for a bit, and then it was boring and long. There's always just like these big extreme dips where something just like retroactively makes that arc worse. Whereas at least for me with this arc, the bits that bothered me kind of are a little bit around the Vegeta section and maybe some other sections. But like as a whole, it's a competently told story that felt very Dragon Ball-y and belonged, in that universe, with that world, with that original manga.
Well, what are some of those big complaints about this arc? Because AJ, we were joking about some of the tweets that you got back at you earlier, like pretty much split down the middle of, this arc sucks, this arc's the best. So it's tough for me because I really enjoy this arc. In fact, I think I love this arc. So I can't put myself in the position of this arc sucks. What are some of those takes? What are people saying when they don't like it? Ken, you're laughing. All right, Heath is raising his hand. Man, all right, I guess I got to use your audio track. What do you want to say?
I guess my thought on that is more so, I think that it's a monthly chapter, and because I find myself, and I know AJ kind of talked about it, is as you're going along, all of a sudden you read a chapter and then you have a month to stew on it. You're like, gosh, that was bad. And the next one comes out and it's really good and it makes sense. Everything falls in line. And then the next chapter goes the opposite. And you kind of bounce around a lot because it's so drawn out where you're cramming an entire month's worth of content into a 15-minute read and then you're done. Whereas previously you could go at your leisure at least weekly. Not that we were all involved in that, but it was much more of a leisurely read than you're taking it in snippets, but at large chunks all at once. And so there's no real cohesion between each chapter unless you go back and familiarize yourself with the previous chapter or anything else. And you kind of almost play a little catch up as you're going. And I think there's a little bit of a disconnect. At least that's how I have always kind of felt. I always wish this was a weekly serialization. I don't think we're ever going to get that at this point, but I think that's kind of where I come from.
And most of us have said, wow, my reread was different because blank. We would have a slightly different take or opinion on a portion of the story. I agree. I totally agree there.
Well, I am not on video, so I was not able to raise my hand while AJ was speaking, but taking the super original arcs, which is the Universe 6 arc and Trunks and the Tournament of Power, I think, honestly, I enjoyed all three of those arcs more than I did this one.
Okay.
And the Trunks arc was by far my favorite and still is. And I know people have issues with the ending, but my issues with the ending were more with episode 66 than 67, which I liked. The only part of 67 I didn't like was Future Trunks not staying in the main timeline. That was like my big disappointment, but everything else about it was great in my opinion. Tournament of Power had issues, but it was fun from beginning, like genuinely fun. I was having fun. There was a lot of work involved and I was kind of stressing out a little bit, but it was fun. And I just never felt that with this arc at any point, except for, like I was talking about earlier with the battle on Earth. I kind of got into that on my reread. I don't remember how I felt about it the first time.
Jake, you're someone who only did a condensed read of this arc. So how would you kind of rank it?
I mean, I've complained a lot about the callbacks and Moro being kind of boring, but I mean, that stuff aside, I think it started really well. It kind of dips in the middle. I think all of the henchmen are terrible. I mean, except for Cranberry. But all of the, I can't even remember his name, the guy who explodes at the end, Sakambo.
Sakambo.
So his whole crew, I couldn't tell you anything about them right now, except one of them is a Zarbon ripoff. And then, anyway, so it dips in the middle, but then it gets good again at the end, I think. I did like the weird giant Goku. I mean, I thought, Moro merging with the Earth, it's like Cell self-destructing, but still it did weird stuff. It felt like a ripoff, but also a new, weird, crazy thing that we hadn't seen before. So I think because of that, like, all of the worst stuff was in the middle. So because it ended pretty well, I think I'd kind of, it started and ended well. So everything else I kind of can forgive. But, I mean, okay, so as far as the manga of Super goes, I would say this is my favorite arc. Maybe the only arc that feels like an arc. But it's hard to compare it for me with the anime version of Super. I think I'm more with, I'm afraid to say your name now, but Therese. But yeah, I think, I mean, I enjoyed the anime original Super arcs, like Universe 6 and Future Trunks, and even the Tournament of Power. I mean, at the time going through it, it was kind of a drag, but, I did the Super rewatch back in 2018. And, when I was going into the final leg of it with the Tournament of Power rewatch, I'm like, oh god, I don't know if I might have to just quit and do this in next year or something. But then when I started it, I'm like, I was surprised. It was pretty easy going. It's like there's a few bad episodes, but then there's a lot of really great episodes. But maybe it does have the problem of it's too episodic, and so it doesn't really cohere. But anyway, my point is that I'm pretty positive on the Super anime after Resurrection F. And I feel like those arcs in both versions, in the anime and the manga, they had a lot more, they didn't seem as reliant on the really obvious callbacks as this arc. So I did like this arc. I don't know how I'd rank it against everything else in Super. Because, I mean, Super is so diffuse. It's hard. It's like, how do you compare this manga arc to the Broly movie?
I know, right?
And that's partly where I was going to go with my question, was how much of an influence or even a distraction do you think it was that this was a standalone manga story arc compared to everything else was, I've already seen this in the anime, or they're they're running at the same time, where this was completely just Toyotaro's running with it.
I think that really helped the excitement month to month, because you truly had no idea where it was going. Like you said, Super was behind or ahead of at various points. Remember, Universe 6 was we were ahead of the TV series. They charged ahead to speed up the excitement of the TV series. And then there was that specific, I think it was during Piccolo's fight where that switched and it got behind again. And then we got into the arcs where everything was just totally different. So it had its own, like, well, I'm excited to see what's different, but also then you're constantly comparing it. And Broly's just total own standalone thing. Yeah.
But is this also what lends most of us to agree that this is what truly feels more like a story arc?
I think that's where I was going with that for sure.
Yeah.
And it has its time to shine, its opportunity. It is just a manga arc. I'm curious though, for Moro in particular, we were talking about Moro as a character and not much in the way of motivation to him, but he's got some cool side glances. Do you think if they nail the right voice, that would elevate him a little more too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
I completely agree.
Get some decent writing staff on board, embellish some of his lines a little bit. Yeah, It could be pretty cool.
I think if he gets a voice that's not what was in my head as I was reading it, I think will be good, because I was reading it as a mix of Gandalf and Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, and I don't think that would have been good. It's just what came to me.
It's a very different voice to what I had in mind. Oh, man. I think I had almost like a... Have you ever heard the dub version of Jiren? For some reason, I have his voice in mind. What's his name again?
Technically, yes. Patrick?
Oh, yeah, Patrick Seitz. Yeah. Seitz? I don't know. But yeah, his voice was kind of what I had in mind with Moro when I was reading.
I saw that at Comic-Con. I didn't know that's what I was going into when I went to that panel. It was the last episode dubbed. Well, here I am. This kind of ties into... The reason I was going down that route is Mary and I decided that we're going to, for the billionth time, try to catch up on One Piece. And this time we're doing it through the TV series. We've tried reading the manga before. I actually just last year tried starting over in the manga. And I'm sorry, I think Oda's artwork is terrible. And I think he's a terrible panelist and I just can't do it. But I love the characters, and I think the characters live and die by their voices. And I know a lot of people feel that way about Dragon Ball, whether that is the Japanese cast or another cast. And I am a huge fan of the Japanese cast. I think Nozawa and Horikawa, those characters through and through. And I understand where a lot of people are coming from when they say, no, I'm going to wait until it's animated. It's like, that's where I was going with that Moro question. It's like, yeah, there's some more depth that can be delivered in some of these characters, Moro in particular, by a really solid voice. And then you start going down the rabbit hole of, who would be the best voice to cast as Moro? And I don't necessarily want to have that conversation. I think there's a lot of great voice actors out there, but I just want to acknowledge that I get where people are coming from if they don't want to read it. But at the same time, like, Dragon Ball was originally a comic, and that was exciting to me about this arc was we're in the original medium. That was really neat.
I still wonder if that Italian interview that Toyotaro did, or no, it wasn't the Italian one. It was the Anime News Network one, wasn't it? Where he said that he was going to be ahead of the anime in the future.
And that was forever ago, and who knows what that
that was meant. 2016.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this was like really the plan and they were going to let him get ahead and then start another anime. But, there's like no sign of it.
One thing that I was thinking about was just the fact that this arc took 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the weird thing is it does not feel like it's been 2 years.
Well, what has the last year even been?
I'm just saying from a Dragon Ball perspective, like it doesn't feel like this arc has taken 2 years. This year alone has taken 20 years. But besides the point, I feel like the pacing was done well enough that it worked out to think back that, wow, this started in December of 2018. And that just kind of blows me away a little bit.
Yeah, that is weird. Like, Super ending feels like forever ago for me. Yes. But this arc doesn't feel that long ago at all. It's weird. I just have a total disconnect there.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly my thought behind it. Because I remember when Super ended and everyone's like, well, within a year, it's coming back, the TV series, and we're going to be good to go. And they're just getting this started to get it off the ground so they have some backbone to work with. And yet here we are 2 years later.
Well, it's like we saw with Kai. I mean, the instant you take it off the air, it does better. And so they know that Dragon Ball can just coast for as long as it needs to before they do anything. And if they do anything, maybe it'll be a movie. Who knows? I mean, that's the thing that I'm not sure a lot of fans understand, is that Dragon Ball doesn't need to be on TV for it to be more than profitable for them.
No, it does not.
I just wish that some of the things they were profiting on was Moro merchandise, because there's nothing. He's not in the Heroes games.
Right.
It's like anything that happened in this arc doesn't exist. Anything that happened in Toyotaro's Dragon Ball Super, except for Gamma Burst Flash, doesn't exist.
Well, even all the figures right now are still Gogeta, Broly. I mean, it's like the movie just came out, if you look at figure lines and video games.
Yeah, it's mad.
Or until it's in there, like we saw with Super Saiyan God Vegeta, where until it was in the Broly movie, it wasn't a thing. Though it clearly was, like it was over here. But I mean, we could have an entire separate podcast conversation about the retcon of Super Saiyan God and what it is and means and how it works. I think we'll have to do that at some point. That's a disaster. But I totally agree with you, Ken. It's simultaneously, it's the story. This is the current official real Dragon Ball story, and you wouldn't know it.
Just give us an anime so Shintani can draw anything but Gogeta, because I feel like that's all he's been allowed to do for like 2 years now.
Give the dude a break.
Everyone's just going to turn into Gogeta at this point.
There's no such thing as too much Gogeta.
I feel like they're saving Moro, though, for the animated series, because this is something that we've seen in the past. There is not a lot of manga-driven merchandise. It is largely video game and animated series driven. Am I wrong to say that?
There are figures for Gohanks, and there are no figures for Moro.
That is true.
Like, this is a tragedy.
I mean, if they included some of these new characters in Heroes, they'd have to give them voice actors, right?
Yeah. They would. And I guess it's happened over in the English version first, like Beerus first appeared in Battle of Z, dubbed before, but I guess that's not the Japanese version. I'm trying to think, has there been anything like Super has been the weirdest thing that has given us all these different scenarios.
Frieza's son, doesn't he have a voice actor in Heroes?
I think Nakao played him early, and there's a separate one in Heroes that played him. Yeah.
But that one's more of a lineage type of voice actor.
I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it'd be an extra step if they wanted to include the characters in video games, is that they'd have to cast them, and then presumably that casting would have to carry over to a new anime, should that ever happen. So, that casting Moro for a video game carries more weight than just casting Frieza, as much as I love Frieza.
I feel like we've talked about everything we can, and yet there's probably someone screaming at their phone or computer or something like, hey, you didn't talk about blank, and you're absolutely right. These kind of conversations, especially when you have multiple people, we can't talk about every little thing as much as we would want to, and we prepped and we reread and we made notes, and I'm sure there's something we forgot. I truly enjoyed this. I did my best to thank all of you ahead of time, but I am truly appreciative. There was such enthusiasm for jumping on this podcast to talk about this arc. I think there was something about this arc in particular, and hopefully we articulated that during the episode that made everyone kind of want to jump on and talk about it. So I think maybe, AJ, do you know how I feel about this arc now?
Not really. I know you like it, but I don't know the little nuances.
Well,
it's his favorite arc of all time.
That's the fun thing about being the quote unquote host of the show, is that I mostly get to ask other people questions.
I'm so glad you put that in air quotes, but nobody else can see that.
Although, AJ, I got to say, I love when you're like, hold on, I want to ask you guys questions. Like, I need that. I need someone else to do that every once in a while. I'm extremely appreciative.
I start getting paranoid that I'm like taking over the show. I'm like, just shut up. Just let him ask the questions. You just stop saying things.
No, it's great. I love it. Again, I'm very appreciative of everyone. I'm going to go around and redo introductions and thank yous to everyone. I'm going to start with this jackass who showed up late to the show. Co-founder of Kanzenshu, Heath Hugio. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. And mostly because I messaged you ahead of time like, hey, I'm just going to show up and watch and maybe interject. And yeah, so that happened.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you more in the future. Also, co-founder of Kanzenshuu. So glad to have you back on the show, Jake Herms. It's great to see you in the Twitterverse again. Dragon Ball World is not the same without you. So it's good to hear from you, man.
Yeah, and I just want to provide audio evidence that I'm alive. Bots now, they can fake anything.
I know. And I see bots that are set up to specifically retweet you. It's really weird.
I'm glad you're back because you're talking about the new Dragon Quest anime, which is amazing. And I want everyone to watch it.
Yes, that is... I mean, I love Dragon Ball, but that has been the highlight of, the last... I was going to say the highlight of the year, but I've really been not involved in anime except for last month. But anyway, everyone watch Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. It's on Crunchyroll, so it'll probably be going for the next 2 years, and it's really good.
It is very good.
I guess I'm going to keep going down in order of authority. Therese, wiki administrator. And, I always joke about Heath being my secret boss. I think Therese is actually my double secret boss.
I think she's become my secret boss.
Sorry about that.
No, I like it. I need somebody to keep me in check. Keep me focused.
I try not to be too obnoxious because I know that I just kind of wandered into this fandom in late 2015 and you guys have been here since the late 90s. So I try to be good.
You're more than good.
It's hard sometimes because I'm older than all of you.
It's true. You actually have someone older than me now.
Baby.
AJ is the baby. But
yes, AJ is almost exactly 15 years younger than me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
that's how I remember 15. How old he is.
But Trez, Wiki, we're gonna talk some more about it soon. Whether you want to or not, you're going to be joining me for a Wiki live stream in the future, and we're going to have a good time kind of giving some more sneak peeks on things. But I just want to reiterate that I'm very appreciative for everything you do, and I'm in awe, actually, of the work you put in on this stuff. It's really incredible.
I try not to think about how small of a dent I'm making in everything.
Well, every little bit counts. It's cliche, but it's totally true. AJ, you're the baby. You're last. So I'm going to go over to Ken. Also, wiki editor extraordinaire. I want to talk with you about Kakarot again at some point. I feel like we'll have to do a year recheck-in on that game. But just to tease people, you did a replay and you basically are playing the game on pause. What does that mean?
Right. So, when we played Kakarot the first time, I was just playing it to play it. And then I was thinking there's a lot of stuff, with the time travel mechanic in that game, you can't revisit side quests. And so I'm there's characters like Suika and Nek that I need to go back and figure out how we're going to write the entries for. I need to refamiliarize myself with Animaline and all the little Toriyama drops that are in this game. And so I was $15 on Black Friday on PS4. I'll get it on, I played it originally on PC, playing it on PS4. I platinumed it. I'm now playing the DLC, which is just a grind. So maybe we'll save the follow-up for after the third piece of DLC. I love that game, though. And I just wanted to say, it's always a treat to be on this podcast. I've been a fan for as long back as I can think of liking Dragon Ball. And it's starting to not feel weird to be on this podcast.
Oh,
and so I really love being here.
I think you bring something unique and special to the show, just like everyone else here. I very much appreciate your work, but also your input, your thoughts. It's good stuff, man. AJ.
Hello.
Time is it right now?
4:11 a.m.
Thank you. You were one of the first people that was like, "Yep, on the show. I'm doing it. I'm talking about it." Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate being here. I'm surprised anyone even cares about the silly things I have to say anymore. I feel like kind of moving away from YouTube, I've just become angry Twitter user number 4 million. So it's nice to sit down and actually talk as opposed to trying to condense thoughts into mini tweets, which never ever goes well.
No, it's not good. You need that personal connection. I think it brings out. I think you have important good things to say, and that's why I agreed to let you on here, man.
Hooray. I just need to be less angry when I type things.
Yes. Every time you're going to type something, you think, would Mike approve of this?
There's definitely been points where I do think, I bet Mike thinks I'm such a jackass for this. Which is nice, I guess.
I only care what Herms thinks about when I tweet.
Oh man, Herms disagreed with me the other day, and I was just like so heartbroken. I was like, oh no.
It is a gut punch.
What have I done?
Well, I'm glad. Well, you'll be glad to. I had this whole. I was going to tweet a response to your comment on movie 12.
Oh no!
But it got to be so elaborate that I just scrapped it.
I'm glad.
I'm going to go through the whole movie, like plot point by plot point, and explain why. Well, for one thing, explain why it has a plot. And then I'm like, yeah, the hell with it.
Yeah, I think I would have just replied like, I'm just being incredibly facetious because I don't like that film. I love how angry people get when I say I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's if you don't like movie 12, arguing with you, it's like arguing with the flat earther.
It's true.
But isn't that what Twitter is for? Just to make other people angry at you?
No, it's not. It's not what it's for. Oh, Heath, we're going to have words.
Well, then we must be on two different Twitters, Mike.
I give one last thanks to everyone. I always say that the podcast is just my excuse to get my friends together and have a drink and talk about things that I like. And if anyone else happens to listen to it and enjoy it, that's cool too. But I truly am appreciative of this. This has been a 2-year arc that I've really held back on my opinions on. And it's been fun to chat it out with everyone. I would love to hear what folks have to say. You can tweet at Kanzenshuu. You can send an email, podcast@kanzenshuu.com. We'll have a forum thread for the episode. Anywhere you want to talk about it, we would love to hear your thoughts on the arc. People always say that, like, oh, comment below. I truly will read literally anything and everything that someone wants to send us about this, and I'll probably respond to it too. I just enjoy Dragon Ball that much and talking about it that much. I like to think the fact that I'm still doing this in 2020 going on 2021 says something about my love for the series, and this group in particular really helps reinforce that for me. I don't think I would still be here doing this if it weren't for folks like this. And not to get too sappy, but Heath, I've talked about this with you, but when you, myself, Jake, and Julian made Kanzenshuu in 2012, after doing stuff for so long at that point, we really thought like, well, this is it. We're done. Dragon Ball's over. At that point, it was over. We're just going to coast for a while, and, we'll obviously operate the site forever, but this is it. The fact that new people have come into this and have become this good of friends to us.
I agree. This is not what I foresaw when we did this in 2012.
We were truly like, that's it. Cool. We've met everyone we're going to meet, and we've done everything we're going to do. The fact that I'm looking down this list and talking to these folks, some of which I didn't know at that time, it's awesome. I'm just really happy. So thanks, Morrow. That being said, www.kanzenshuu.com. That is kanzenshuu.com. With this episode, I will link everyone's Twitter, whatever they want me to link for them. I was going to say, or their YouTube channel, but AJ, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to link your Twitter.
Good plan.
And that's it. You can tweet at them. You can tweet your angry responses back at them and tweet your happy responses back at me and at the main Kanzenshuu account. I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us this episode. I'm actually hoping I will see you next week for a follow-up to this episode. It will not, no, you're crossing your fingers, not with you. Sorry. The episode will be with someone else, and then our year-end episode will probably be the week after that. So again, don't shake your fist at me. I'm the boss here. A little bit into January, we're going to try to do our usual year-end and predictions and all that. We missed it last year through no fault of my own. Just saying. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time. Bye.